Okay, right. Thanks for joining us on this video today. We're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity and in particular what we see in the real world when it comes to cybersecurity. So I've gathered some of the greatest minds at the HPP group together. So we've got Dan Hewer from our support team. So Dan obviously sees a lot of what goes on in the real world of people phoning up when they unfortunately do have problems around cybersecurity. We've got James Royle from Kamarin Computers and Darren Jacklin from HPP. And James and Darren are two of our account managers who look after obviously our customers on a regular basis. So they get involved right at the beginning, maybe when somebody's looking at cybersecurity for the first time, all the way through the lifespan of a customer as their needs change, or indeed cyber security and cyber attacks change as well. So I suppose the first thing to think about is kind of where we're at the moment. We've obviously had a lot of change in cybersecurity over the last sort of 10 years plus probably, but in particular over the last year or so. We're obviously working from home. You can see that from where we are, but it has changed the landscape again. So James, what do you think people's mindset is at the moment? Are they scared about cybersecurity? Are they more scared than normal? And should they be?
I don't think they're necessarily scared. We need them to probably be a little bit more concerned than most companies are. I think in the current climate, with us moving more and more of our workforces out of the corporate buildings, so we're at home now, there's the opportunity there for a lot more risk and attacks to happen without IT managers know what's going on. So I think they should be aware that because of the changing climate, the threat has changed. Maybe more towards the end point than it previously was. And do we think they should be scared? Probably just more aware of what's going on and concerned about what the outcomes of an attack would be, I would say.
Okay. And from your experience, Darren, what situation are businesses in when they first start to look at cybersecurity? So maybe the first time it's come on their radar. Are they fully aware of the flaws in their system? Are they there because actually they've been hacked before, or somebody they know has been hacked? What's the trigger point, and where do they think they are generally when you first speak to them?
Yeah, so it's a good question, that one, Phil. So we've had a fair few businesses that have approached us to try and get a good understanding of their current infrastructure, what their security risks are. Obviously, everyone's heard about what's been talked about with the GDPR side of thing, and businesses are wanting to know, are we protected? What happens? Should a breach happen? Do we report that to the ICO type of thing? So, long and short of it, I think a lot of businesses don't really understand how unsecure their networks possibly can be until a point, someone like us, we can come in and do those audits and give that information back to it. Whether that's just a case of, as James had mentioned earlier, you've got more and more people that are now working from home. You've got your data outside of that corporate boundary versus those businesses that are still working internally within their offices, but actually they don't have any cyber protection in place to start with what they think they had. I think for me, and I think probably Dan and James will probably agree, is historically people thought antivirus software was enough because they've only historically heard of viruses that attack people's businesses, home PCs, networks, etc. And they think, oh, we've got an antivirus software, we're fine. Or they have that mindset of, my data is within my business, it's sat in a flashing corner, it's fine, no one's going to attack me. And they don't realise that actually systems are fully connected to the internet, still fully externally presented, should I say, and at that point, accessible to any threat that a cyber criminal, an attacker wants to try and force on them.
Okay, so you mentioned that they don't necessarily understand what the threat is at the moment. Why do you think that is? Is it that it's too technical for most people to understand? Is there too many acronyms going around? Is there just too much noise in the media about various big businesses getting hacked and not the small ones? What is it that maybe doesn't make them think that there's a problem there initially?
I think two things is on that one. So the business owners are great at knowing their business. They're great at knowing what their industry is and what they need to do for their business, but not necessarily about what needs to be done in our industry to make sure that their businesses are protected. And I think that's a prime example that we've seen far too often, that they know what they need to do to achieve their business, but they don't know how to protect it as such. And the second thing on there is just awareness. They don't fully understand exactly what risks are out there and how a simple system can easily be attacked, or how simple things can prevent those attacks from happening. I think for me, awareness is the key thing that we need to start driving home to a lot of businesses.
Okay, and
I think something I'd add to that as well, Phil, is a lot of customers or companies still think that it can't happen to them. It won't happen to them. It happens to somebody else. Now, maybe Daniel can give us some more info on this because he's at the front line of talking to people. But customers I've had that have been attacked, there's still a degree of apathy that they, like I say, it can't happen to us or it won't happen to us again. So I think that is part of the purpose of this, is to raise awareness that it can happen to any customer or any company of any size, regardless of how many users you've got or how many customers you've got. Everybody is at threat.
Yeah. What sort of threats do we see, Dan? What are the most common ones at the moment?
Yeah, so there's the tricky thing is that we often see new threats, new breaches happening to different companies almost on a daily basis, and it can be hard to keep up, especially with how quickly the IT industry in general changes. To give a couple of examples, there's been a couple of big phishing campaigns that have popped up in the last week even, that specifically are targeted here in the UK. In one of these, we see people receiving a text message from what appears to be Yorkshire Bank, of all places. Now, it doesn't matter where in the UK are, but you still get the message as if it's from Yorkshire Bank. And it will say something along the lines of, "We've detected suspicious activity on your account. Please log in to resolve these issues." And then it just gives you a link which you can click on, goes to a legitimate looking website, which if you're not being particularly careful, you might log into. And at that point, they have your bank details. Game over.
Yeah.
Another similar one with COVID obviously being such a massive issue here in the UK, and with the ongoing vaccine rollout programs, this has sort of presented an opportunity to these attackers, and there's been lots of instances of people receiving an email that says, "Hey, look, it's your turn to go and get the vaccination. Click here, log in to book your appointment." Takes you to a legitimate looking government website. You log in with your government gateway ID. They ask you for some form of ID, so like your passport, driving license, and what have you. And as soon as someone's got that information on you, what would you do then? It's game over. Phishing is.
From my experience, Dan, when I first got involved in cybersecurity, it was a very technical approach. If you wanted to hack a business, it was about finding out a route into the network and delving around on all the servers. Kind of what you're saying from those examples now is we've kind of gone completely the other way, and it's what's known as social engineering, but effectively tricking an end user. And what we're saying here is kind of any end user to, let's say, make a mistake and give away some details. Is that kind of what percentage of it is around that social engineering side now?
Yeah, so with how sort of things these days are a lot more secure by design without requiring any additional like user input, as it were. So what we actually see, and I've actually got a couple of stats here. So of all breaches and attacks in the last 12 months, 86% of them involved some sort of phishing or social engineering. Okay. That's essentially almost all of them. And in the last 12 months alone, 46% of businesses have been subject to a successful breach or an attack. And so overall, it works out to about 1 in 5 that have also lost either money or some form of important data to one of these attacks that comes from this type of sort of social engineering or phishing attack. Whereas, and this is the kind of thing where it's very easy to do to a lot of companies at the same time. These type of emails or messages that get sent out, you can send millions of them instantly with no problem whatsoever. You don't have to learn your target, learn how to break into the business. And with that sort of success rate, yeah, why not do it that way? Yeah. It definitely is the way that works.
So in that respect as well, so James, how do you deal with a customer who's, as Dan said, technology's evolved so much? I mean, we won't talk about it much now, but antivirus, I know we talked about that right at the beginning, but it is now really advanced. It's so much further along than what it was 10 years ago, almost faultless to the point of what it's specifically designed to do. But actually now, once I've invested in my antivirus and I've put my firewall in and I've done this and I've done that, all of a sudden now I've got a brand new risk, and I've got users clicking on text messages potentially or emails and bypassing this. How does the customer's attitude change maybe once they've got that security in place? And how do they think about these new type of threats? Is it frustrating for them? Is it a fact that they understand it's constantly evolving?
I think it's each individual business has to have a strategy of continually looking at how the market is changing. If you haven't got the time to do that yourself, you rely on a partner like us to make sure the tools are in place that will address those. The sorts of solutions and services we deliver are continually updated by the vendors and by our experience to make sure that they are as up to date as possible. But one of the key things is awareness of your staff. There's those stats that Dan gave us there. I would say the vast majority of all of those attacks will come via email. And something he said right at the beginning was, I think it was around if you weren't paying attention whilst you were typing your details in, because of the volume of attacks, it only takes one accident, one Monday morning when you're a bit tired and you start typing your details in, or a fake LinkedIn message, for example, telling you you've got some people looking at your account, and that gets you a bit excited and you click through it. Just takes that 1 minute of unawareness that can actually bring the whole house down. So strategic advice, a strategic approach, advice off some people like us who know what we're talking about, but also awareness, general awareness amongst your staff of what a phishing email looks like, what a fake email looks like. I think that's really key.
Okay, so with that stat that Dan gave us, obviously, and what you've mentioned there, 86% coming through that social engine channel, most of them coming through email. Unfortunately, we tend not to give people good news when it comes to what they have to spend on cybersecurity by the sound of things. It's a constantly evolving process. But to you, Darren, what's probably top of the shopping list at the moment? Let's assume that people have invested in the past and they're not starting from scratch. What's the one solution at the moment, if you can narrow it down to one? I'll let you have two if you can't, that people really need to be looking at seriously right now.
First one, priority, which I'm seeing and speaking to a lot of people about, is two-factor authentication. It's a simple, something you know and something you've been given process. The something you know is my username and password. You know, I'm the only one that knows that. Something I've been given is a token or an authentication, push a button to let me in. The way those two go then hand in hand works quite well. If I lose my password for whatever reason, whether that be that social engineering platform or, as Dan had mentioned, you know, I missed a website that looks genuine and I put my details in. Okay, that person that wanted those details, that, you know, that's tried to trick me into giving them, they've got them. But what they can't do with them is anything with them. They can't go onto them other websites, or they can't go into certain platforms or certain portals, because as soon as they use my username and password, which I've accidentally given them, they haven't got that something I've been given, that token, that two-factor authentication to actually approve that request to get logged in. So as much as that doesn't negate the risk of losing your password, it dramatically reduces the risk of someone being able to use it moving forward. And again, that's, for me, that's the most important thing which can be implemented. It's a very simple a very low cost process. There's platforms out there. I think, as Dan had mentioned earlier, some of the security is included by design now. Elements such as Office 365 have got a form of multi-factor or two-factor authentication included in that. Going hand in hand, they've got a free authenticator app which you can put on your mobile phone. It's very very minimalist. It doesn't do anything else on mobile phones other than approve that process, and it's the simplest, easiest method which can protect against that first attack. Appreciate you said I can have two. So the second one is, how do we educate people, to do that? And again, this simple software out there, phishing simulator attacks, which you can publish, you can send out to your employees, send out to your staff, to see how many of these people are actually falling foul of these scenarios on a day-to-day basis. Long and short of it, you create campaigns on various different topics. You randomly send them out to your staff. They either click on them, they open them, they do nothing with them because they know what's going on. But you've got dashboards where you can log into and see, right, I've sent an email to James, Phil, and Dan. Dan knows what he's on about. He's not opened this in any way, shape, or form. One of the others has actually been curious and clicked on the link. Now, if that was real, there's the risk to the business. But luckily, it's a simulation. It's a test as such. And then you can go back to the MD, to the IT manager, the FD, whoever's got the control of the IT within the business, and say, right, okay, these are the elements. This is the training that needs to be provided, and this is the awareness that still needs to be raised internally. And those two things, hand in hand, it can stop a lot of the risk that we can probably see, and probably cut down a lot of that 86% that Dan had mentioned earlier. Yeah.
So what we're getting at here again is something that we've talked about, probably harped on a bit for a long time, which is a layered approach, isn't it? It's not
Correct,
just the two-factor, it's the training, and it's kind of every layer before that as well, where your antivirus and your firewall and everything else kind of comes into that process to stop that.
One more can I have a couple, Phil?
Yeah, go for it.
I would say invest in a decent spam filter. Spam shouldn't be something that you just accept. Have a spam filter that can block everything out. If you can take out 80–90% of the obvious rubbish, then that stops people from clicking on it. But also, I think I mentioned it earlier on, because we're all now working from home or working remotely, or a lot of us are, your business perimeter has gone all wobbly rather than nice and neat behind a firewall where it should be. The endpoints are now being used, personal devices are being used. So make sure that the endpoint protection is as fully featured as it possibly can be. If it addresses antivirus, brilliant. If it can also address malware, even better. If it can address something like ransomware attacks, brilliant. Make sure you've got as many features covered as you possibly can.
So just quick thing to add into this. One other sort of fairly major thing that you can do, which doesn't cost you anything other than really the time taken to sort of implement it in the first place, is you can use a system what's called least privileged access. So the idea is that you only give your members of staff access to things that they absolutely need and to be able to do their job. So things like files they can access, software they're using, even physical locations in your offices maybe. Do you need your receptionist going into your server room, for example? Maybe you do, that's on your case, but so the question to be asked. And this ensures that, I mean, 86% of companies have fallen to some, well, not necessarily fallen, but have been subject to some sort of attack that has succeeded. And in those cases where someone does get access to someone's account, they're then going to be limited to the things that they've got access to. And I think that, and again, it's, if you're not already set up for it, it can take a while to actually set the sort of system up. But it can sort of massively improve the results and on the sort of occasion that you do actually get attacked or breached.
Yeah, I think I always like an analogy, and I think that we often sort of compare cybersecurity to physical security. And I think, like you're saying there, Dan, if you think about your office, well, who's got the front door key and then it is allowed everywhere? and actually which parts of my building do people not need to go to all the time, and I actually just need a few people there. Think about that like our file structure as well. It's the same situation. It's obviously fairly straightforward, I think, to think about for most businesses. It's probably by department, isn't it? And you've got a few super users that can go everywhere. And actually, I suppose, does that tie in with what you guys see, maybe to you, Darren? Although we can restrict that to everybody, is it the fact that your managing director, the directors within the business, the managers in your business who have the most access are therefore the ones that are the biggest risk and probably have to be most on their guard?
Yeah, no, that's right. And actually, just touching on what Dan has just said, when we looked at when GDPR came in a couple of years back, one of the main slogans or comments that was there was like appropriate measures to mitigate risk, and that's what needs to be done to protect your network. And as Dan had mentioned, does a secretary need certain access to certain elements? Possibly not. So we can fully restrict that down. The managing directors, the finance directors, the people that, as you mentioned, at the top of the chain within the business, they want to have full visibility of everything that goes on, and they're the ones that actually, as a cyber criminal, they're the ones that really want to be targeted. Which goes back to your comment about the social engineering earlier. Is, do we social engineer and start at that secretary? Do we go from the secretary and do we move up a level? Do we then move up a level to the point where the managing director has had multiple people within their business speak to this person? They're automatically assuming that this must be a trustworthy person because several people below have already spoke to them. And again, that's what that person wants to achieve. They want to achieve the highest level of access that they can get. And if that's the managing director, fantastic. They've achieved it. They've got through that social engineering process, built the way up the chain. It's not an overnight task that they do it. They can periodically do this over 2 to 3 to 6 months. Yeah. And that's how long certain things can take. But ultimately, they're the ones that need to be protected the most, I would suggest.
So that's a good point. Now, just coming towards the end of our questions, and I think that's a good one to speak to Dan about there. So that is one thing that's very difficult to understand for users, in that sometimes we see what appear to be hacks that have no obvious monetary gain for the hacker. So to give an example, we've seen a lot of emails going around sharing files. The link takes you to a Microsoft 365 login page. Obviously, a huge amount of users use that for their email now. Somebody will unwittingly put in their details into that page, giving away their username, obviously, and their password, probably most importantly, and then they don't access the file, or there was nothing there in the first place. But then the hacker goes into their account and starts sending out more of these emails. Now, on the face of it, there's no obvious monetary gain there. They're just constantly moving from one target to another. So how long can it be that a hacker is willing to wait to monetize that, and how can that transfer from being effectively a spam campaign into something where they get money out of it, whether that's directly from the person involved or from someone further down the chain?
So we've all seen the emails that have like a Word document or a PDF attached in them that you download and open them, and it doesn't seem to do anything. And there's no sort of instant like payoff, like you said. There's a campaign that's been going for, at this point, close to a decade, called Emotet. And that's where most of these come from. The idea is that once you've opened it, it's on your PC, it will sit in the background and not do anything. Now, the sort of controllers of this, what turns into what we call a botnet, so this happens on enough computers, you now have control of, say, 3 million computers around the planet. Now, if you want to do something that requires a large amount of processing power, well, now you've got it. Individual PCs on their own, for a person using them, sure, fine. But for anything that needs huge amounts of processing power, aren't particularly useful. But now you've got millions of them all connected, where the user and the owners of these PCs aren't aware that it's happened. But you can now put them to whether it's farming cryptocurrencies, or whether it's having them all send traffic to a particular website that you want to take off the internet with like a DDoS attack. whether you want to then just have this sitting there waiting to deploy something else to them later on, whether that's ransomware or some such. So there's a few different ways that you can go with it, and it's very much most important that you catch it before it happens, because if they've already got past the initial sort of antivirus checking files, you looking them over, they're much more likely to just sit on that system until they do get activated or do get used by the attacker.
Yeah, and the fact that you mentioned that the same piece of software has now been going for over a decade, we can only really look at that and say where the problem lies, isn't it? When the solutions are available, it is, as James and Darren, it's about awareness here and saying that there are solutions for virtually all of these problems, and of course it is constantly changing and constantly evolving, but ultimately there are relatively simple fixes for most of the things that are coming out now. So just to come to the summary of this then, James, do you want to kind of just give your view then on where we're at the moment and what businesses should do next?
I think where we are at the moment is that it's an ever-changing threat landscape. There's stuff going on all the time. It's almost impossible, unless you're interested in the subject, to keep abreast of it at all times. So I would say that most customers that I speak to, I've got a little bit of putting their head in the sand and hoping that they're covered. They might have antivirus, it might not be updated, they don't know. It's just a case of we've got something, we're kind of happy with it, it can't happen to us. So if I was going to give anybody free advice, it would be find out, make yourself aware of how safe or not your business is. If that means an audit, if that means a sit down review of what access people have got inside your business, whatever it is, take that first step. Don't put your head in the sand, don't ignore it, it's happening all around you. And if it does happen to you, it can have a massive effect in terms of loss of uptime, loss of income, loss of customer satisfaction. All of these things can come on the back of an attack, which can stop your business from trading. So whatever funds you've got available, I would make yourself aware of what situation you're currently in. That would be my best advice.
Okay, and then from a strategy point of view, Darren, from just as the final question for this little session, as James mentioned, the funding's available is absolutely key there. Actually building this in terms of what you can spend. It's some respects it's an open checkbook. You could keep going on forever and ever. But how do you work with your customers to say, well, these are the priorities and these are the challenges? What sort of period of time should we be looking at when it comes to a cybersecurity strategy?
Well, as in terms of period of time for a strategy, as James mentioned, it's an ever-evolving landscape. So theoretically, is let's do it on day one. Let's get a good understanding of what you are, what you've got, where you are. Then start building in how can we prevent some of these aspects from coming in, and then we'll just look at that as a risk versus impact. And let's sit down, let's discuss, let's have a grown-up conversation about, okay, what is the chances of this happening versus if it does happen, what does that mean to you as a business? And then kind of work out a strategy based on that. I think that's the easiest and the best approach of doing it. I don't think you can really put a time frame on it because, as Dan had mentioned, there's been something that's been going on for decades. So, for a decade. So do we then actually, there is no time frame. It's let's look at priorities, let's start implementing certain aspects and let that evolve and let that grow based on what's seen happening. Priority though is let's get the first, the strongest, the most risk resolved, and then work backwards from there.
One of the common things that I think a lot of businesses tend to do is that they'll bundle security along with IT. They'll have an IT budget, they'll have refreshes every 3 to 5 years. Whereas security, I think probably it needs to be, especially these days, it needs to be its own separate thing that you budget for and review at different timescales. 3 to 5 years, everything changes in that time period. It needs to be something that you're looking at near enough constantly, really, sort of as the landscape changes, as you're saying.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you all very much for your insight and your opinion and your views. Thank you if you've watched this and you've enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll come back with another one soon. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Cheers.